Good morning, everybody. My name is Marina Sirota, and I'm the Acting Director of Baker Computational Health Sciences Institute here at UCSF. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Research AI Day. And I was told that if you go to slido.com.org, I don't know, and go to hashtag UCSF, there are some questions that are waiting for you so that you can tell the organizers a little bit about yourself. This event was organized by the AI Guild, a new partnership and collaboration across many groups on campus, including Baker, CRIO, DocIT, CPH, EpiBiostats, and many others. I would like to credit the birth of the AI Guild to Dr. Atul Butte, my lifelong mentor, with a vision to bring the UCSF AI community together. He had this idea about a year ago, and it's been amazing to see the team come together and bring this vision to reality, culminating with this day today. In order to start the day, it is my honor to introduce Chancellor Sam Hawgood. A renowned researcher, professor, academic leader, a pediatrician, Hawgood came to UCSF in 1981 as a clinician and a researcher. His work focused on surfactant therapy for babies, which has saved millions of infant lives. He became chief of division neonatology, then chair of Department of Pediatrics, the dean of School of Medicine, and was appointed as chancellor in 2014. As chancellor, Hawgood expanded partnerships and cultivated collaborations with industry, other academic centers, and community groups. He fosters innovation and entrepreneurship with the goal of translating research discoveries and therapies to advance care and improve health. One of his top priorities, lucky for us, is harnessing the power of data and advanced computing tools, including the use of AI to bridge the field of genetics, molecular research, bioinformatics, and medicine to better health outcomes for all. Thank you so much for being here, and please welcome Chancellor Hawgood.
Thank you so much, Marina. It's a real pleasure to be here today at the very first Research AI Day at UCSF. I think everyone in this room obviously believes, as do I, that we are on the cusp of transformative breakthroughs in health and medicine that will be powered, at least in part, by artificial intelligence. So this event is not just a gathering, it is a celebration of innovation, collaboration, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge here at UCSF. And I don't need to tell you all, we need a day of celebration every now and again. We hope today's event will be both informative and inspiring, providing a unique opportunity for you to interact with colleagues within the UCSF AI community. I believe all of the seats in this room are sold out, and it's being streamed to an additional room downstairs, which shows just how much interest there is, in fact, in this. I encourage you to share ideas freely, introduce yourself to new colleagues, and really dig deep into the ecosystem that is being built here at UCSF in and around AI across all the dimensions of what we do. As Marina said, a number of organizations have come together to form the AI Guild, as it's being called. It's a collective dedicated to advancing the application of AI in our research endeavors. Just like you, I'm hearing and reading a lot about AI these days. The rapid evolution of AI from a futuristic concept to a practical tool is reshaping our understanding and approach to healthcare. At UCSF, I believe we are uniquely positioned to harness the potential of AI, thanks to our world-class researchers, cutting-edge technology, and the place on the planet that we occupy. As I'm sure most of you know, OpenAI has now taken over 200,000 square feet of space immediately across the street here at Mission Bay, and we are surrounded by all of the major AI companies. From a leadership perspective, UCSF has always been at the forefront of medical advancements, and today is no exception. AI allows us to analyze vast amounts of data with unprecedented speed and accuracy, leading to insights that were previously unimaginable. It is helping us cross the scales from molecular data to clinical and population science, enabling us to draw connections and make predictions that enhance patient outcomes and public health strategies. So throughout the day, you're going to have tremendous opportunities to engage with leading experts here in the field. We have a wonderful keynote speaker this afternoon. When I saw her green coat, I just remembered it's St. Patrick's Day, so I apologize for wearing blue. But as we embark, remember that just as in all of our endeavors, the secret sauce for UCSF is collaboration. So really engage with your colleagues today, and I believe that we will unlock new opportunities and make the most of this incredible opportunity. So thank you for being here. It's a terrific way to start off the week, and I'll now turn it over to Dr. Ida Sim.
Thank you, Chancellor Hawgood, and thank you for your steadfast support for AI. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the AI Day. I'm Ida Sim. I'm Chief Research Informatics Officer, also co-director of the UCSF UC Berkeley Joint Program in Computational Precision Health. I have the pleasure of giving you just an overview of the day today. It's a very packed day. We'll start off with three of our leaders here at UCSF, Tony Capra, Sara Murray, and Mark Pletcher. Going to describe the opportunities to transform UCSF in the biomedical and health sciences research in AI, in discovery sciences, health systems, and population health. You see that we do span the whole spectrum of the kind of research that we do at UCSF. Ethics is super important. We'll move next to Sara Ackerman and Julia and a friend to highlight their work on ethical and equitable AI and what that means for us here at UCSF. We'll have a break. Then we're going to be tapping into concurrent tracks that dive deeper into those three research areas. And then we'll move on to lunch and then a keynote from Marilyn Ritchie from Penn that we're so happy to have Marilyn here with us. We'll then have roundtable discussions where we're going to tap into you, so please keep your thinking caps on. There'll be a chance for us to dive deeper in smaller groups, and we'll be collecting those insights and share. As Sam says, we're here for collaboration. We'll then dive deeper into methods and the AI models and assets, many of which are new and are ready for you to partake of, and we'll end the day with a poster session and then a reception as well. We have 70 posters. It's really wonderful. So the next generation of leaders and researchers and working with us to move AI forward at UCSF. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce next Professor Tony Capra, who's professor and head of the Division of Bioinformatics at the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics here at UCSF. He's also Associate Director for Discovery, AI, and Education at the Baker Computational Health Sciences Institute, co-director of the UCSF Biological and Medical Informatics PhD program, and consulting advisor to me in the Chief Research Informatics Office. His group develops computational methods for interpreting the effects on genetic variation on human evolution and disease risk. And here's Tony.
All right, hi everyone. It's such a wonderful pleasure and honor to be here with you today. It's been really great fun to work with all the groups that Ida just mentioned over the past several months to think about what are the opportunities and challenges for UCSF and its adoption of AI. And so I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to give you my perspective on that. And to start with, I want to just acknowledge the sort of complexity that all of us are confronting. So biological systems span more than 10 orders of magnitude, both in space and time. So from everything from the nanometers that we see, these molecular interactions we need to study when we're looking at DNA and proteins, all the way up to kilometers when we're studying communities and the effects of environmental exposures on those communities. And in time, everything from nanosecond motions of molecules to the hopefully 100 years or so that we will all get to live. These systems we're trying to study and understand just span an incredible scale. And so I think if you're like me, part of the reason you're doing this is because of that complexity, because it is so amazing. Whenever I learn something more about biology, I'm almost shocked that it actually works. And so understanding this is just, and being able to work toward understanding this is such a privilege, especially when we know it can ultimately have really meaningful effects on the lives of people we care about and patients. And so coming from this complexity, there's also, I think, a set of challenges that we have to acknowledge and address as we think about the role of AI. And that's the fact that often it results in siloing of knowledge and expertise that ultimately limits our ability to understand processes at any one scale, and then especially across scales. And now this is not because anyone's doing anything wrong. This is just how complex and complicated these systems are. To give you a few examples from my world, where I spend a lot of time down here at the level of genetic variation, if you go to the usual human genetics conferences, it's really rare that you ever hear someone even talking about protein structures or functions, much less cells or organs or tissues. And it's really just because we've got our hands full trying to understand and manage the complex data and processes we have at the scales we're working at. So, discovering an association between a genetic variant and some effect on a patient or a community scale is really exciting, but there's still a massive gap in terms of the mechanisms that underlie that association and how we might actually use that association to better understand possible treatments. And so I really think, I imagine that most of you can, in your own worlds, think of some examples like this where, really it's hard to make those jumps, hard to talk across those scales or boundaries. And I hope that this being UCSF, some of you are saying, no, Tony, that's not actually true. We're really good at this. I think we are really good at this. We're better than a lot of places, but there's still a big challenge here in terms of how we break through these silos and barriers. And to spoil the message, I think AI can play a big role in how we do that. And adding to this, these challenges and the complexity and difficulty of going across those silos is just that we have data revolutions happening at each of these scales really simultaneously. And again, to give you a few from the worlds that I live in, we now have, thanks to the reduced cost of DNA sequencing, genetic variation data from millions of humans. And at the other end of the spectrum, we now have, thanks to efforts from the Baker Computational Health Sciences Institute and integrating data across the UC Health Center, electronic health record data from more than 9 million individuals. And these are just amazingly rich, but amazingly messy and complex data sets that we need to understand and manage. And as you all know, artificial intelligence and AI-based models are starting to enable this at each of these scales. Everything from models based on DNA that enable us to predict the effects of any genetic variant on gene expression, or at the protein scale that enable us to design new molecules or drugs or proteins with certain functions. And on up the scale of biology, we're getting more and more powerful AI models. And I think we need to acknowledge that artificial intelligence is really becoming a foundational tool for how we do science. I think the Nobel Committee got a little bit activist in making this point last year in awarding both the Nobel Prize for physics and for chemistry to AI advances or AI-based methods. So in physics, of course, to some foundational discoveries underlying these deep neural networks that have proven so powerful. And then on the chemistry side, methods like AlphaFold and Rosetta that are enabling understanding of how proteins fold and function, and then designing proteins with specific functions. And so I think we just have to acknowledge both this complexity and the important foundational role that AI is going to play in resolving that. So I also want to be clear that we're already deep in this game, and we are leading the development of many of these models at many of these scales. And now I have to become a little bit of a salesman, because you're going to have to make a choice later this morning about which track you go to. And I helped organize the discovery track. And so I want you to come to the discovery track. And so I'll give you just a quick taste of some of the things you'll see there. So we're going to hear from Jamie Fraser, who's been building models that attempt to sort of learn and synthesize both the language of chemistry and the language of structural biology so that you can put those together to better design possible treatments and drugs. Then we'll hear from Christina Theodoris, who's been working more at the cell level and trying to treat the cell as essentially, and the genes expressed in a cell as a language, and to learn how, if you perturb a given cell's gene expression levels, what effect does that have both, going, sorry, Jimmy, going up and down the spectrum. And then finally, you'll also hear from Jimmy Yee, who's been showing how we can basically treat proteins as languages and learn amazing things about the effects of any possible genetic variant. And so please come and see these people that are developing the absolute cutting edge models that are underlying basic science discovery here at UCSF, and think about how you can collaborate with them, how you can use the tools, how you can make their tools better. And so really that's my goal for today, is to help us think about how can AI enable what Sam was talking about, what Marina was talking about, this unique culture of collaboration that we have at UCSF. We have world-class expertise at each one of these scales. We have cutting-edge, high-throughput data at each one of these scales. So how can we put it together? How can we prevent that from just leading to deep insights about DNA, or deep insights about protein, or deep insights about cells, but to keep pushing that all the way up and all the way down that spectrum, so that we really can say, when we sequence a patient's genome, what's going to happen at this scale? Or when we observe a patient with a particular phenotype, what likely is the type of dysfunction we're seeing at the organ and tissue and cell level? And then what can we do about it? So really, my goals are, I want us to find ways and work together to make UCSF's data, expertise, and AI models accessible to all of us. And now we're a really diverse community with different kinds of needs, different kinds of questions. So there won't necessarily be a one-size-fits-all solution to this, but that's what we want to talk about today. We want to understand, what are your needs? What are your tools? What are your resources? And then also, how can we then, once we've started building that, link data across those scales to enable discovery? So I'm not just talking to the other human genetics and evolution folks, so that we can really push those advances all the way up and down the spectrum. And the model that I like to use in my head is sort of thinking about on-ramps and highways to this spine of the kind of biomedical trajectory. And on-ramps are basically ways that we can enable researchers who either have data that they think could be really useful for some AI methods, or could be integrated with some existing tools. Or even maybe they don't have data, they just have a question about the gene they've been studying, a hypothesis about its function, how changing its expression in a given cell type might lead to effects up the spectrum. Or maybe you're up here and you've been studying a community or a particular group of patients, and you want to know what could be some good hypotheses about the molecular basis of the phenotypes you're seeing. We want to find ways to get all researchers engaged in this powerful new set of tools. And then, of course, there's also how we move between them. These are the highways. These are the ways that we can integrate data both up and down the scales to say, okay, what does the protein level say about my genetic variant? What does the cell level say about my protein? And these are not independent. These are ways to leverage resources, leverage understanding that we have at different scales. Biology is largely consistent. And those of you that are following AI methods know that there have been several powerful new methods that have been developed just at the DNA level or just at the protein level that have been able to learn actually attributes of function at a few of these higher levels, just from the DNA or just from the protein. But we don't need to make the problem that hard for the AI. We know a lot. We have models that have learned representations that are biologically meaningful at all these scales. So we need to stitch those together, use those representations, and help data across the scales improve the representation at each individual scale. And I really think that this is going to enable us to have a lot of modularity. So when a new model comes along, a better representation at a given scale, we can essentially plug it in. Or maybe you have your own model that you want to try out. Great. This is something that, again, there's not going to be a single solution. These models move quickly, and we need to have a flexible system for moving across these scales. So for today, I want to end just with a prompt, or a set of prompts that I want you to be thinking about. And I want you to come talk to me about and tell me if you have ideas about this approach, or if this is not the right approach. Come tell me that. I want to hear. So what AI resources do you have to share? Who do you see as users? Who do you want to be users? What can it do? How can we help share that? And then what do you need to incorporate AI into your work? Are there challenges that you're seeing? What could help remove some of those barriers? And then finally, how can we best use AI to link across these scales? How can we leverage all this amazing knowledge and expertise we have here at UCSF so that we are actually talking to each other in a way that is enabled by these powerful modeling strategies? So with that, I will close and now turn it over to Sara, who is the Vice President and Chief Health AI Officer for UCSF Health. She's also an associate professor in the clinical medicine and serves as an associate chief for the health system partnerships in the Division of Clinical Informatics and Digital Transformation, or DOC-IT as I know it. Dr. Murray is a strategic health system leader for informatics, digital health, and data science. Her team builds infrastructure and governance processes to ensure the deployment for impactful and ethical AI, and she evaluates commercially available tools and algorithms for their trustworthiness prior to implementation, and then develops new machine learning models to address pressing health system problems. She's responsible for the overall vision and strategy for the use of AI at scale to transform healthcare delivery at UCSF Health and beyond. And she spends her clinical time attending on hospital medicine service. So let's welcome Sara.
Thank you for having me. So I'm going to talk about AI in the health system, and really I wanted to focus on the on-ramp for research tools. So what are the structures that we have in place to really support you in bringing these solutions into the health system? Now that I realize we have competing tracks, I'm going to put a plug for the health system track, and I'm going to say that nothing that you just heard actually matters unless we can actually take those solutions and get them into the health system effectively. And so that's why everything I'm going to tell you about matters a lot. And you should really go check out the health system track after this, because then you can learn about how people are overcoming the challenge of implementation. So to understand where we are today, I think it's important to learn a little bit about where we've come from. And so it was about 10 years ago when we got our first any kind of AI in the health system. And AI is a bit of a strong word for this, but they were really just the ability to deploy really simple predictive models. Researchers could do that as well in Epic's cognitive computing platform. But we quickly realized, as we were doing this from both the health system and research perspective, there was a real lack of infrastructure and standards to deploy this effectively. I could tell you, I don't have enough time, but I could tell you hilarious stories of things that happened. And so that led to two new structures. One was we recognized we really needed robust infrastructure for AI deployment. And so thanks to Dr. Hossein Soleimani, who's somewhere here, we built our health IT platform for advanced computing to allow deployment of any model type with real-time data in a HIPAA-compliant way. And then we established our AI oversight committee to guide ethical implementation of trustworthy tools. A lot happened since then. We actually got an inquiry from the California Attorney General, and they wanted to know, UCSF Health, how are you using AI? Tell us every tool you have and how it's being used. And we realized I knew what was happening on my team, but beyond that, we had no idea. And so my team actually went through everything that had come through IT security risk assessment in the last 5 years, hundreds and hundreds of tools. And we found 60 AI tools in use at UCSF. And we had no idea who was using them or how they were being used. And so that really led to us establishing more robust infrastructure. We entered the generative era. Lots of exciting opportunities now to do this work at UCSF with Versa, thanks to Key Lai, and Nebula, which is our Epic platform. But there are still gaps that we're trying to solve around really finding the best use cases in the health system, resourcing implementations effectively. We were fortunate in the Division of Clinical Informatics in Doc IT to receive a donation to work on our impact monitoring platform for AI in clinical care, kind of weaving that work into the other AI oversight work. And so there's a lot you'll hear about today that's going to be really exciting in the health system track. Just briefly, you'll learn more about this and how folks are using this, but this is just the general structure of the health IT platform for advanced computing. As you can see, we can bring in real-time and historical data. We store the features, we store the models in the predictions, and that enables our monitoring infrastructure as well. And then we can write those predictions back into Epic and display clinical decision support or other tools to help people make effective decisions using these tools. We have a two-tier approach to health AI governance that's fairly robust, and we structure our governance in this way because we recognize we really need to be able to move quickly and responsibly in this very fast, quickly evolving environment. And so our Health AI Steering Committee makes determinations in the health system about resourcing and prioritization for key health system initiatives. In general, researchers don't need to interact with that committee, but there will be an opportunity at the end to do so, and that's why I'm putting that here. In the future, when research tools are so robust that they've come through our research pipeline that I'll tell you about, and the health system says, this is amazing, we actually have to adopt that, this committee will help with that, and that's where we're hoping to get in the future. Then we have our Health AI Oversight Committee, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that because that's the committee that really helps make sure our tools are trustworthy in the health system. So Health AI Oversight Committee at UCSF really provides governance for everything that comes into the health system, regardless of where it's coming from. So I don't care if it's something our team built in the health system, if it's something we're buying from a vendor like an AI scribe, or if it's a research tool built in the lab. We decided as a group that we really need to hold all of these tools to the same standards. And so we adopted the HHS principles of trustworthy AI, which I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar with. And we built this committee to really kind of oversee evaluation, ensure longitudinal monitoring, ensure compliance with very quickly evolving, less federal regulation right now, but previously some federal regulation and more state regulation that we're seeing now. It serves as a forum for identification of best practices and also facilitates these linkages between clinicians and researchers. And so, every tool, as I said, that is going to touch patient lives comes through this committee. We have very diverse membership, and so we're very grateful for, there's health system representation, obviously. We have many academic faculty. We have, researchers, biostatisticians, ethicists, risk, IT security, very diverse community, and we appreciate everyone's input. And the way we do this work is we really break down the AI life cycle into these 5 main phases, and then we intervene and we review these projects when we're ready to either do a prospective evaluation, which requires high pack and a lot of resources, when we're ready to deploy a pilot, and then when we're considering adoption more broadly. And so just to give you a flavor of what this committee review is like, because I think this is where things get really challenging for researchers. Up front, we really care about things that make deployment successful. So you're not just asked about the AI and how well your tool performs, but also, what are the current workflows that you're trying to replace, right? Which actually requires talking to the frontline clinicians and learning those current workflows. And then what are the new workflows and how are people going to use these tools? And so I encourage you, if you're doing work and you really want to be on the implementation pathway, to engage, frontline clinicians and operational folks early, because these are going to be critical things to making your project successful, as critical, in my biased opinion, as how well that tool performs itself. So very briefly, thanks to Julie Adler-Milstein and Janusi Yazdani and others in this room, I'm very excited to tell you briefly about our AI monitoring infrastructure, which is IMPACT. This is a very unique partnership between the health system that bridges health system expertise with academic expertise in doc IT. It's generalized monitoring infrastructure, plus pretty robust adjudication processes around metric development. And the idea here is that we're meeting the needs of both the health systems and evolving research questions by kind of adopting the McKinsey 3 Horizon framework. And so Horizon 1 is, what are the critical things that we have to build today for the health system to know an implementation is successful? Horizon 2 is those more advanced insights, and Horizon 3 are more of the open research questions. How do we have infrastructure and processes that support people in those pursuits? And so people are starting to write grants based on this, and we're hoping to really bring both communities together. I'll tell you briefly about Apex-enabled research. So this is the front door for implementation of research tools in the health system. It is inclusive. It's not exclusive to AI, but it is inclusive of AI. Launched by CTSI, now managed by IT and ARS. It is full service support for researchers. You'll hear about a number of projects that have come in through this pipeline. They help with budgeting, design, build, evaluation. You get to extensively interact with our health AI team if you have an AI project. And then there's shared resourcing supporting both the infrastructure and the validation pieces. So raise your hand if you've heard about this launch? Okay, a few people. Okay, so we are very excited to recently have launched our AI and machine learning demonstration open proposal competition. As you can see, it is generously co-sponsored by many groups at UCSF from the health system side and the research community and the campus. And what we're doing here is really trying to crowdsource ideas to advance data science, machine learning, and AI in real-world clinical practice. And so what you can do is if you have ideas or you have projects that are underway that you think are ready for health system implementation, could really change how we deliver clinical care, I encourage you to go to this open proposal and submit your ideas. We really want to provide structures where we successfully can bridge, faculty and the research community. As I mentioned, that committee, Health AI steering in the beginning, they're going to be involved in selecting projects. So they're going to actually get to take a look at all these really novel research and faculty ideas and decide, what truly is going to drive value in the health system for where we are right now and what our needs are. And then what we really want to do with this is ensure success by making sure all the support structures in place are in place along the way. So you'll have technical support from our team, buy-in from frontline clinical champions and operational support and all those pieces. And so I encourage you to check this out and take a look and see if it's something that you might be interested in. So finally, if you're interested in this type of work, the question often comes up, what does the UCSF Health actually care about? And so I wanted to share just some of our AI program goals in the health system briefly without going into a lot of details about various initiatives. But, one of the things that you've probably figured out on your own, if you haven't seen it from me, is that, the health system really wants to improve provider experience. And so a lot of effort has gone into that with the recent deployment of AI scribes to all ambulatory faculty. That's an initiative that we are expanding to many care settings and other provider types in the coming months and years. We want to improve patient outcomes, and that there are a number of clinical and operational risk models that are underway as well to do that. Obviously, improve revenue capture so that the health system can be viable, improve a lot of these manual processes that we do. So, Is it the best use of a pharmacist's time to spend all of their time drafting prior auth requests? Probably not. And so what can we do so that people can really be working at the top of their licenses? Obviously, as I mentioned, ensuring all AI is trustworthy, that touches patient lives. And finally, really thinking about solutions. UCSF is growing exponentially. And so what types of solutions can we put in place to really support that growth as we see more patients and previously manual processes like reporting, data entry, and things like that become very tedious. So that's a very high level what we're doing. Again, to see amazing work from numerous faculty in this room who are coming in through the, who are kind of working through this initial infrastructure, please come to the health systems track this afternoon. I'm sure the other tracks are amazing as well. Come to this track. And it is my pleasure to introduce Mark Pletcher. The brilliant Mark Pletcher is the Director of Informatics and Research Innovation program in the UCSF CTSI. He's the Chair of Epidemiology and Biostatistics at UCSF. His research focuses on prevention of cardiovascular disease, clinical decision-making, and how to use technology to improve health. And I will add to his bio that he's an amazing partner in helping me think about how we really bring the research community to integrate with the health system effectively.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. I usually give a talk right after Sarah. We have a sort of 1-2 punch thing that we do where I give the talk about how we support researchers to engage with the health system. But Yulin, is Yulin here today? Somewhere. Yulin, who's helping lead the population science track, pushed me to put my other hat on, which is the Chair of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, and think about how AI and population science go together. How do we use AI for improving population health? So just borrowing Tony and Ida's scale diagram here, population science is at the far end of the scale here, where we think about communities. And I would argue that it is, where we focus on both community level outcomes, but we also think about this as kind of the final common pathway for impact. And that includes you basic scientists, it includes the clinical sciences in our health system. You all, if you really want to make impact at scale, have to engage with the community and our population. And I'll just remind you that our mission at UCSF is to advance health worldwide. So we have of course, a special responsibilities for our own patients, but also for our community in San Francisco and for the population in general. So how do we think about using AI for population health? Well, we think about, in population science, we think about, of course, biology and healthcare delivery and personal behaviors and how those things impact population health. But we also think about community level context, things like the built environment, policy, the political context, structural barriers to our population getting the services, the healthcare, the access to technology that they need to live their best lives. So what does AI have to do with all of this? I think, just thinking about this broadly, can think about AI and population science in a couple different ways. And I'll just talk through some of these with examples. One is thinking about AI as an upstream cause of population health and health disparities. Okay, and that involves observational research about what's happening in the world and this revolution in AI that is rapidly emerging and affecting our population's health. It also involves thinking about how to use AI as a research tool for doing better population science research. And this is one of the things Tony is talking about, how AI can be a tool for collaboration and research and just I think the ways that we are finding to use the new technology and AI to do better research is a really critical thing for population science, among other things. And also, finally, we can think about AI as an interventional tool for improving population health. So let's just look through some examples here. So I would argue that we're all highly exposed to the effects of AI in our daily life. AI algorithms are everywhere. They help us find things like, suggesting movies for us to watch, stuff to buy through advertising and information. But they also cause what appears to be harm. Think about the effects of AI algorithms that are in social media on our young people who are feeling socially isolated, anxiety, et cetera, driven by the adverse effects of some of social media's influences. And political polarization, spread of disinformation, bots or actual AI entities out there spreading information that is not always beneficial. And then there's also the increasing intentional use of commercially available tools like large language model-based tools. And these could have major beneficial effects on our population, could democratize access to knowledge. Also, it can lead to potential harm, partly through how these models have been trained on massive troves of information, much of which has built-in biases about how and generates responses and such that reflect the historical biases that have created the data that the AI was trained on. Kim Rhodes will be talking. This is part of my sales pitch for the population science track. Kim Rhodes will be talking about bias in AI and how we think about it and address it through community resources. And I think there's a real potential danger here for AI leading to increased disparities. So we think about technology access and who has access to the best cutting edge technology, and I think very well could lead to widening gaps in health in our population. And also de-skilling. I mean, think about how I used to be able to find my way around San Francisco and places without Google Maps, and now I can't really. So, and that sort of thing is happening across the board in our lives. So, population science is the way we think about what are the causes of the population's health. Doing causal inference research is something our department focuses on and thinks about a lot. Okay, let's talk about AI as a research tool. So machine learning is actually a tool that can be used for causal inference. There's a center here. I don't know if we have anyone from the Berkeley Center for Machine Learning and Causal Inference here. Hopefully, yeah. So machine learning and algorithms actually has a role in, despite being sort of a black box thing that we don't usually like with sort of causal diagrams and such, it does have a role for designing propensity scores, weighting algorithms, et cetera, that can be useful and very highly important for causal inference research. AI can also generate special new variables from unstructured data. We have all this data generated from the population and such that is potentially useful for understanding our world. Think about analyzing sentiments in social media posts. This is something that ULIN does research on. Think about image analysis of Google Street View photos at scale to think about what's happening in local communities and what the characteristics are and exposures that the population sees at a particular locations in the US, which is place-based research is something that AI can help with. And AI can actually help us in the process of doing the research as well. It can generate code, of course. It can help with analysis and such. It can also help with informed consent, study enrollment. We have teams at UCSF using generative AI models in the workflow of enrolling patients who can then ask questions about the study and get responses about what the study is about and how it relates to them personally as they decide whether to enroll in a study. We have a group here, Urmi Mala and Michael, we'll be talking in our track today about how to use AI to do thematic analysis and qualitative research, which is quite an interesting application of generative AI. And then Jean Feng, who's also leading our population science track, will be talking about how to use large language models to look into and improve the sort of black box AI algorithms. And finally, how do we think about using AI as an intervention, not just in our health system like Sara was talking about, but also more broadly in our population? We can think about, of course, detecting outbreaks, surveillance, understanding what's happening in our population in terms of health threats broadly, using all the sort of big data that is generated at high velocity these days. But we can also think about deliberately designing AI interventions and tools for our population and what they need. Think about delivering medical knowledge to people on demand using large language models, which can pass the boards and know more than most of us about details of medical science. Think about AI agents running internet errands for homebound elderly patients, or AI nutritionist menu planners. I have a colleague, Alexis Beatty, who's developing an AI nutrition bot that understands what's happening with the patient, what they like to eat, and can have a conversation with people about planning menus and suggest meals that can be healthy. Think about AI support for new moms. Irene Chen, I think, is going to talk about an AI chatbot that might support moms breastfeeding late at night, talk to them, keep them company, give them advice about parenting, et cetera. Think about AI companions for life coaching, gentle guidance, pep talks, things that might benefit our population, in particular, people who are most vulnerable and most would benefit from this new technology. So how will AI impact population health? Let's think about it carefully and let's try to use it for good here. Let's study it. Let's study how it's working currently in the real world. Let's use it in our own research to do better research, and let's design it intentionally for parts of the population that need it most, who are at risk of being left behind, so we can use it for good. So enjoy the population science track today. Okay, and now I get to introduce Sara Ackerman, who will talk next. Sara is a medical anthropologist, associate professor of social and behavioral sciences, and director of bioethics and regulatory support at UCSF's Clinical and Translational Science Institute. She conducts empirical ethics research with embedded public engagement focused on how genomics, AI, and other emerging medical technologies affect the lives of patients and caregivers and mitigate or exacerbate persistent health disparities. Welcome, Sara. Oh, I'm also introducing, pardon me, Juliana Friend, who is a medical anthropologist, postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, and a member of the bioethics and regulatory support team at UCSF's CTSI. Her recent work explores how abortion seekers in restrictive states conceptualize digital privacy risks. Dr. Friend's ongoing research aims to amplify the expertise of diverse constituents on how to amplify the benefits of emerging technologies while minimizing potential harms. Sara and Julianne.
Hi, everyone. We're delighted to be here today to be able to talk with you about public engagement as a path toward ethical and equitable AI. And I want to pause and acknowledge the value of being able to think, write, and speak openly about these vital matters of concern. I also want to say we're in the enviable position of being able to advocate for all tracks. Because ethics pertain to all of them, and hopefully what we say will be equally relevant in all tracks. So let's get started. If I can figure this out. All right. Okay, so we're going to go through some of the potentially familiar ethical concerns that hopefully a lot of you have are familiar with. And these we're grouping into design and implementation phases of AI. So the first being bias, which I think we're all aware is, Mark described it really nicely. We want to highlight how biased data and biased algorithms are actually helpful for us to learn about how the societal conditions created those forms of bias. So that's why it's important for us to both try to reduce bias, but also try to understand where it came from. Transparency is a big issue. We don't quite even know how to define it yet. Is it about explainability? Is it about whether we understand how the AI makes decisions? And what happens if that runs up against accuracy? And there is some interesting emerging research on that in terms of what the public thinks about that, which we'd be happy to share with you later today. And then in terms of privacy and consent, a lot of questions are raised by that. That's happening in something of a kind of a regulatory vacuum, in that we have privacy laws which date back even before the digital data revolution. So they're not really keeping up. So key questions include whether and when to obtain consent to use personal data to develop AI, and what are the privacy risks that we're incurring in using patients' data to develop AI, either to individuals or to communities. And then also what do we mean when we talk about accountability? This is a term we hear thrown around a lot. To us, we think it has a lot to do with whether the AI system aligns with patients' and communities' values.
And as Sara Murray introduced so wonderfully, equally important are the ethical and equity considerations arising from the implementation and use of AI in clinical contexts. So regarding transparency, as Sara indicated, other Sara, when and in what situations do we communicate with affected groups about AI use? And when and how do we obtain informed consent about when AI is used in care? And how can informed consent be meaningful, taking stock of the wide range of levels of familiarity patients and others may have with the technical aspects of AI? And regarding accountability, do AI applications benefit all groups? Who is responsible for potential harms, given the range of actors involved in developing algorithms, implementing them, and those whose care decisions might be informed by algorithmic output? And in terms of unintended consequences, how can we best foresee and proactively mitigate unintended consequences, including but not limited to automation bias, or the tendency to favor decisions generated by machines, which can lead to errors, de-skilling that Mark indicated, and even deterioration of AI performance?
I've definitely seen my own de-skilling in the Google Maps realm. So there's been mentioned before that there is a sort of an ongoing lack of federal regulation. There's not a lot of state regulation around AI. This leaves academic medical centers sort of in the position of having to develop their own oversight mechanisms. And Sara described ours. These are the same HHS values or principles that she posted. So really, a lot of academic medical centers are grappling with this, and they're drawing on these principles, frameworks to develop oversight. But there are a lot of questions remaining about how do we actually operationalize these principles? How do we turn them into actual practices? And what do we weigh them against each other? How do we decide, is one more important than another one? So there was a recent study of 13 academic medical centers in the US, which showed that actually a minority were considering equity, racism, and bias in AI governance processes. So that's concerning, but the good news is UCSF is in the minority in doing so. But this raises questions about how these principles are actually being taken up.
And in line with UCSF's commitment to equity is an emerging consensus that public engagement is a core value. So for example, in 2023, UCSF hosted an algorithmic justice workshop that brought together health systems leaders, various AI experts, and UCSF patients and community members. And one of the recommendations that emerged from this convening is, quote, to provide opportunities for community engagement in governance, in model development and deployment. So we can pose the question, why is public engagement relatively uncommon?
So I think a lot of you may have some answers to that question. Some that we have identified include concerns that involving members of the public in AI might require high degree of technological literacy or digital literacy. That might require training. That seems to be a barrier. There's concern about representation. So who actually gets to speak for communities? Concerns that this might result in some kind of tokenism. And then, of course, cost, in the sense that we all know, those of us who do community engagement, it's very costly in terms of time and resources. And so there may be a reluctance to take that on. But we do want to highlight some of the really significant potential benefits. And those include that collaborating with affected groups will result in AI applications that better align with community values and patient needs. And that this can result in not only better AI applications, but also more trustworthy institutions and more trust in the research enterprise more generally. It can also improve how we communicate with patients about AI use in clinical settings.
And so conversations are emerging around the guidance that might be needed for when and how to engage affected groups. And we will note, as many in the room can attest, that affected groups also includes clinicians and other clinic staff. And another key question is how to act on the perspectives and values of affected groups. So, for example, how is the authority to make decisions distributed, and how can it be equitably distributed? And if the perspectives elicited conflict with one another, how do we respond to that misalignment? And thirdly, there can be at times a tension between an emphasis on rapid innovation and a commitment to public deliberation. As Sara mentioned, it takes a lot of time, relationship building, and resources.
So just to conclude to let you know what we're thinking about right now and how we're hoping to help UCSF move forward with more multi-constituent engagement in AI. And right now we're engaged in a process of assessing whether some existing models would be feasible to adopt here. Two that we have included here include a model of co-reasoning. And what this is really referring to is bringing in affected groups throughout the AI lifecycle as what are called co-workers or epistemic partners. These are terms often used. I don't know that there's a lot of evidence on how this works in practice because it's so new. Another model is Stanford's AI ethics model called the FIRM model. They've embedded multi-constituent interviews to identify potential values collisions, as Juliana described earlier, and then try to address those. So our immediate goal is to understand whether we can adapt and build on any of these models specifically for the UCSF context. And we also want to really strongly promote the integration. So there's been some great talk so far today about the culture of collaboration at UCSF, and we really want to promote the team science model, which involves integration into AI development and implementation of ethicists, of DEI experts, of implementation science experts, and social scientists. And we think all of these groups have a lot to contribute across the AI lifecycle. And if you're interested in hearing more, please do get in touch with us.
And we'd also like to give shout outs to the other BRIE team members, including Lori Herrez, who will be leading a roundtable later today, and Leslie Riddle. And thank you all so much for your attention. Looking forward to engaging with you more this afternoon.
Thanks. Thank you all for a wonderful set of presentations. We're a little ahead of time, which is great. So that gives you time right now to get onto your phones and go to slido.com, enter the keyword UCSF, and we have some questions about ethics, I believe. So please do that. We do have a break until 10:30, gives you some time to network and start those collaborations or deepen them. After the break, which is at 10:30, we'll be having concurrent sessions. You've heard the pitch for Discovery Science from Tony Capra. Yay! Health Systems pitch from Sara Murray. Population Health pitch from Mark, from the bottom left to the middle to the upper right of our slide of Molecules to Community. So after, at 10:30, please go there before 10:30 so we can start on time. Discovery Science, Tony Capra, go downstairs to Fisher A. That's downstairs. Sara Murray in Health Systems, right here in Robertson Auditorium. And Population Health with Mark Pletcher down in Fisher B downstairs. So enjoy your break and please go to the concurrent session starting at 10:30.